media. Um, you built a program with a history of building culture and known for recruiting. What part of your coaching philosophy do you think will best transition into bringing Virginia Tech back to its constant contender in the ACC?
Yeah, I think ultimately it's about relationships, right? And I'm a relationship guy. And I think that shows up in building a culture. I think that shows up in development of your current athletes. I think that shows up in recruiting. That shows up in retention of your staff, retention of your roster. It's all of it. I don't care what business you're in. I don't care what industry you're in. It's all about relationships. If the players know how much I care about them, then I got a chance to maximize their experience, because I think you can be really hard and demanding on people when they know how much you truly care about them and the team. So to me, that's why we've been able to have some success, is people know how much I truly care about them and their families, how much I care about Virginia Tech and this opportunity. And that's what's going to allow us to get this program back how most of you remember it. But I think that's also one of the biggest challenges, right? You guys all remember that Virginia Tech, but none of the current players do. They haven't really seen that Virginia Tech. So we got to remind people, and we got to remind people quickly.
What was it about Virginia Tech that made you decide that this was the best fit for you?
Well, I think a couple things. I think number one, even before the job was open, Virginia Tech, I think, had realized that what we've been doing for the last 9 or 10 years hadn't worked, and there needs to be a commitment, right? And I think this is a problem at a lot of places, right? Does your expectations match your commitment? Very few places is that the case. So when you see the invest to win plan that Virginia Tech had recognized and admitted that we need to do more, that was helpful, right? That was already in place. They had already done benchmarking studies of what's going on in the conference. Where do we rank when it comes to these types of things? So when I came in and we had discussions about what we have to do to be successful, what was nice is the things that we were talking about, the things that I was talking about, wasn't far off from where they already were based on benchmarking. What my challenge to them is, the benchmarking was only done against the ACC. So is that only our expectations, to just be competitive in the ACC, right? And that's my job, to help with some of these things as well. So the fact that you could see there was already a commitment there before me having to sell them on what they had to do to be successful, that was important. And then I think the other thing is, they made it very apparent early on that my family and me was who they wanted. We had an opening conversation at our house. We thought it was just a get to know each other conversation. They were ready for us to sign that night. We weren't ready at that point, but that factored, right? When you just went through what we went through, to feel appreciated and feel wanted, I think was very, very important to us, and specifically to my wife. So the combination of those things, I think were really important to me and my family.
James, regardless of your history with Brent, that's a unique and unusual dynamic. What's going to allow that to work when maybe people might look at it from the outside and say that's a tough situation for him and for you in sports?
Well, I think it's like anything else, right? You got to have real hard conversations on the front end about what it's going to look like and what it's going to mean. And I think the first thing is, I wasn't expecting it, right? Like, I was talking to him about any defensive coordinator recommendations for me if I took the Virginia Tech job, because if we were involved in some of these other jobs, he was coming with me. And when I said, hey, if I take the Virginia Tech job, you got any defense coordinators you'd recommend? He's like, well, me. and part of that was his family was going to stay for at least another year. So that played a major part. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just Virginia Tech. It was his family. They were going to be there finishing school and those types of things. So that played a part in it. But then it was also, okay, let's talk through this in detail, what it's going to look like, and what it's going to mean, and how we're going to do it. And then I think you say, yeah, we want to do this. And then you get in the contract. And that's kind of messy. It's not as clean as you think. You're trying to kind of work through all those types of things. And then it's, okay, the reality of walking back in that building, and walking past the head coach's office. Or I call him because I want to talk to him about something, and I'm sitting in his office if you don't have a real relationship and a tremendous history, I couldn't do it. It shows his humility, it shows his love for Virginia Tech, but I think it also talks about our relationship. We've known each other for 30 years. His dad was my offense coordinator in college. His first year coaching was my senior year playing. So we go way back. And on top of that, most importantly, we had a damn good defense when he was my defense coordinator. And that's a credit to him. That's also credit to the environment. I've had a lot of really good defensive coordinators in defense. Why? Because I think as a head coach, we have a system that allows the defense to be successful. And I think that's uncommon in college football now. Typically everything's built around the offense, and then you got to score 62 points to win the game, right? The defense coordinator is trying to throw himself out the back of the stadium, right? Complementary football. So I think he was comfortable with that as well, and I was comfortable. And then also knowing I could have somebody to handle that side of the ball, be the head coach of that side of the ball, that I knew would do a phenomenal job. So, but there's going to be other issues come up. One of the things I was talking about this week is I want to sit down and talk with him again, because it's, okay, you get through the initial wave, and then there's still some other things. There's going to be some differences for him and for his family throughout the year that I want to make sure that I'm aware of and that I'm being thoughtful about for him. I think the best thing that happened, though, is when he walked back in and I introduced him in front of the team as defense coordinator, and the whole room gave him a standing ovation. I could not have written a better script, because I think that allowed him to hit the ground running too.
And our coach, Chris Powell, Couch Coach Live.
Hey, Chris.
You earlier in the year you spoke at the Touchdown Club of Richmond. Talk about that experience, and also just about the talent in the 804 and how that stacks against other regions in the state of Virginia.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into the compare and contrast business, but the reality is when you talk about Richmond and the state of Virginia, I'm a big believer. I've done it my entire career, even at Vanderbilt, which was a private school. You got to start in your own state. You got to make it a priority. Sometimes you can come in and do it right away. Sometimes it's going to take a little bit of time, but it's hard to convince a kid from California to come to Virginia Tech, and you can't convince a kid from Virginia to stay home. It's got to start at home and then build from there. I also believe that a player from Richmond or a player from the state of Virginia in general, it's going to mean more to them. I also believe that their tribe is going to be involved. These guys haven't got to these points by themselves, right? Their support system has allowed them to reach this level of success too. So coming to Virginia Tech, staying home in Virginia, and having that support system around you is going to make sense. So whether it's Richmond or whether it's 757 or whether it's the population growth in Northern Virginia, it is critical. And I just want young men and their families to understand that they can get everything they want and do it close to home around people that truly care about them and their development, and that they can get all those things at Tech.
Coach, if you can talk a little bit about participating in your ACC Kickoff and just what it means.
Yeah, I think, it's an opportunity. As much as I'm excited to talk to you, I'm also more excited for it to end and get to football, right? I do think we have won the offseason. I'm not talking comparatively speaking. I'm talking about at Virginia Tech. I think we've won the offseason. I think we've done the right things. There's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of momentum right now. And this is kind of the end of that, right? All these different things, whether meet and greets in Richmond, or whether it's the 757, or whether it's recruiting, or whether it's the transfer portal, or spring ball, or spring game. These are all opportunities to build and create momentum. I think we've done a good job with all those things. After this, then we're getting to the stuff that matters most, is practice and winning games and having that stadium rocking. I saw somebody put something out, it was one of you guys probably, it had rankings in the ACC of home field advantage, and Virginia Tech wasn't on that list. I'm probably going to retweet that here soon. challenge our fans, because a home field advantage is something that Virginia Tech can have. It's also one of the big factors in your defense. You talk about playing great defense and pressuring the quarterback and sacking the quarterback. The fans and the home field advantage can have a significant impact on that. So as much as I love being with you guys and answering questions and keeping people excited about Virginia Tech and selling the message and the gospel of what we're doing, I'll be happy when this ends and I'm driving back down the highway back to Blacksburg and get around the guys and start practicing and preparing for VMI.
Coach, with this new role in the ACC, you're going to be facing a new slew of head coaches, and one of those is going to be Dabo, Swinney, and Clemson in October. Was there a relationship prior to your time at VT? Just what is that going to be like? Did he welcome you to the ACC? Just what has that relationship been like?
Yeah, Dabo's my guy. We go way back. We've been on the Nike trip for a long time. His wife and my wife are friends. I'm gonna be honest. I wouldn't say we're necessarily like the type of people that love a lot of other coaches and a lot of other programs. It's hard when you just compete year round. Not that they're bad guys, just when you're competing year round, games, recruiting, it gets edgy, right? So Dabo's been a guy I've known for a long time. When we go on the Nike trip, we would usually hang out with the Nike people and Dabo and his wife, and obviously tremendous respect for what he has built at Clemson and what he's done at Clemson and what he's done for the ACC. So I got a ton of respect for him and all the coaches. We just had a meeting this morning with the coaches that are going today with Jim Phillips. I go way back with Jim Phillips. My first head coaching interview was at Northern Illinois when he was the AD. So I go way back with him as well. So we all know each other or have connections. Me and Billy O'Brien were on the same staff at the University of Maryland together. We lived in the same neighborhood. His wife and my wife were good friends too. So there's enough connections.
Coach, Virginia, I'm wondering, what do you appreciate about Beau Pribula when he was with you at Penn State?
Yeah.
And the role he played for you guys.
Beau is the man. I absolutely love Beau. I love his family. He's a tremendous leader. It didn't surprise me that he was brought here. He can make plays with his arm and his feet. He can beat you with his brain. He's the real deal. And I was heartbroken when he left us at Penn State. He was put, I think you guys probably all know, he was put in a tough spot. We're in the playoffs, and we lose not only our backup quarterback, but he played a lot for us. We used different packages with him, 2 quarterbacks on the field, Wildcat, all kinds of stuff. I am a huge Beau Pribula fan. I want him to have an unbelievable year. I want him to play the game of football as long as he possibly can. I think he's got a future in the NFL as well. I'll be his biggest supporter and fan every Saturday but one.
Coach Franklin, you went to State College. I met you up here at Penn State. Talked to you during the game. What's the difference between Penn State and Blacksburg? Is there any similarities to the small town USA, colleges? Because that's like a big university now. Up at State College, everybody loves Penn State, and then you're down in Blacksburg, and that's a big state school besides James Madison.
Yeah. I don't want to kind of play the compare and contrast business, and I also I get when I get the Virginia Tech job, every interview I did, everybody wants to talk about my past, right? And I'm answering the questions because I'm respectful of the job that you guys do. But there has to come a point where what we're discussing is Virginia Tech and my current job. I'm very appreciative of my time at Vanderbilt. I'm very appreciative of my time at Penn State. 11 and a half years, a long time in today's college football era. But as much as I understand the questions and people want to talk about it from a historical perspective, I really kind of moving forward from this press conference on, I really want to focus on Virginia Tech.
Coach, I really admire the fact that you got on College Game Day and quickly, you could have sat at home and just cast a check or done TV or something. What was the driving force behind getting right back into coaching?
Well, first thing, let me say this. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was still kind of working through that process. I talked to my wife and my agent, and they say you need to get back in coaching because you'll drive yourself crazy, and more importantly, you'll drive us crazy. So that was a big part of it. I also want to thank ESPN, and I want to thank those broadcasters because they were phenomenal to me. I committed to doing it, and then I woke up the next morning and I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready to do this yet, to be totally honest with you. But it was good. It was good for me to get up and do that and kind of get this thing rolling again. But for me, this is all I know. I've been doing this for 30 years. This is all my wife knows. This is all my children know. And I will also say this. When that happens, for me, I spent a ton of time thinking about all the staff that were out of work, all the coaches that were out of work, all the recruits that were committed that weren't sure what their futures were. We had the #1 recruiting class in the country for the next class. People forget that. A lot of those guys are committed to us. They're committed all over the country now. We had the #1 recruiting class in the country. It was for the coaches. Like, it affects the kids, it affects the wives, it affects their parents, it affects the recruits, it affects so many people. So part of also taking a job was helping as many people as I could to make sure that they had a place to go with people they believed in.
James, when you mentioned commitment, and that word is used a lot, it's important to coaches. What about the commitment had to be shown or has been shown to you, elements of it that needed to be brought out for you to feel good about the direction?
Yeah, in today's college football, I hate to lead off with finances, but that's a big part of it, right? Like, are you going to be able to hire the staff? Like a lot of people don't realize this. I think one of you guys brought it up earlier, but like, I'm not making any money. Like, I'm not getting paid. Like, I could have done the exact same thing for the next 7 years and made the same exact money. So like, when I made this decision, it was for other people. It was, how can I help other people? So for me, taking a job, it was all about, what do we need to do to be successful and truly win at the very, very highest level? So am I gonna have the ability to hire staff? Are we gonna have the ability to go out and recruit? Like, everybody's getting credit for recruiting. There's still an impact of relationships and recruiting and leadership and being charismatic and dynamic. But there's also a financial component. You could be the best recruiter in the country, and if you don't have the resources that other people have, you can't sign a top 5 class in the country unless you got the resources. So are we going to compete and commit to NIL? Are we going to embrace that? Are we going to update the facilities? Like, because I've said this a lot, again, in recruiting, whether it's a transfer portal or whether it is high school recruiting or whether it is just your current players in your building, have you created an environment that creates the best teaching and learning environment you possibly can? When they go on an official visit to one school and then they come to you, does it look and feel the same way? Everything has got to look, feel, smell, and operate big time. All of it. And if it doesn't, you're not going to win at the highest level. And then back to the alignment. I was just on with Jimbo, and Jimbo said this. The head football coach, the AD, the president, and the chair of the board, or what we call the rector of the board, they all got to be aligned and they all got to pull the rope in the same direction. And if they're not, you can't win at the highest level. And each one of those has got to be right. We got a presidential hire about to come up. It is critical, because if you can hire a president that not only can do what the professors and the deans and the provosts need and want, but also understands the impact of what college athletics can do for the university as a whole and the community. Those guys are separators because there's very few of them out there. To be honest with you, presidents that truly understand and appreciate the value of major college athletics.
Coach, what will Virginia Tech football look like under James Franklin?
Well, I think, again, we came out with this, and I think some people didn't understand it at first. We want to reestablish what Virginia Tech football was, what Coach Beamer built, what Bud Foster built, who's still at practice every single day. What Michael Vick was a part of. I was at spring ball one day. We had Mike Vick and the Norfolk State staff there with us for 2.5 days. I look at it, Mike Vick and it's Coach Beamer at practice. I was like trying not to fanboy out, right? But like they built something that was special and won at a very, very high level for a long time. Anthony Midget is our safeties coach. Anthony was a captain of the team that played for a national championship, having him there. I want Coach Beamer to turn on the TVs, and Charlie was with us last night for dinner. I want to watch our games and be like, that's what Virginia Tech football is supposed to look like. You look at the lunch pay, right? That's hard nosed, that's tough, that's disciplined, that's relentless, that's explosive, that's playing smart, that's playing great on special teams, right? Right now it's all about enter Sandman. Well, that's the entrance. We need that same type of enthusiasm, excitement in the fourth quarter. I don't know if they play enter Sandman or we play enter Sandman in the fourth quarter or something, but we need to play it the whole game, right? If we got to, but I want the people that love Virginia Tech to watch us and say that's what Virginia Tech football is supposed to look like. I want true football people to watch us and say that's what Virginia Tech football is supposed to look like. And when you play us, you better button up your chin strap and you better be ready for 4 quarters because we're going to come after you with everything we got.
James, why was it important for you to get the blessing from Beamer?
Well, I think, again, my respect for him and my respect for what he's built here, but also Coach Beamer's still around, and what a blessing that is, right? And for me to take the Virginia Tech job without having a conversation with him first, I don't know how you do that, right? Like, I talked to the president of the university who really wasn't involved in the search. I talked to the governor, wanted to make sure I had a conversation, with him. Thought that was important. Obviously, all the people on the search committee was important, but I don't know how you take the Virginia Tech job without having a conversation with Coach Beamer. And I called him. He wouldn't answer the phone. I had to call his wife and get her to answer the phone. They thought I was spam, but I thought that was important. I know Coach Beamer. I met him through Ralph Friedgen way back. Those guys have a lot of history, and I've always had a ton of respect for what he did. So I don't know how you take one of these jobs and not reach out to someone like him.
That's uncommon. Was he surprised you were reaching out to him when he did get on the phone? I'm sure he was appreciative.
Well, as you could imagine, when I couldn't get him and I didn't have his wife's number, I called Bud to get his wife's number. So I think they had a little bit of a heads up because Bud called to ask if it was okay to give my number, his wife's number, to me. So I think they had a little bit of a heads up that I was calling, but I think I think they appreciated the gesture, and then he showed up to the press conference, which was really cool as well, because at that point he was still living in Blacksburg. They're now living in Charlotte. So yeah, for me to move the program forward, there also has to be, you have to embrace the past. And I think that's been a challenge with Virginia Tech, and I think it's been a challenge with a lot of programs across the country. that have tremendous history and tradition, they embrace and hold on to that tradition and history so tight that they haven't evolved and grown into a modern football program and a modern athletic department. And I think that's one of our biggest challenges, right? How do we move the program forward, stay true to the history and traditions, but also make it a modern program that has a chance to compete at the highest level.
James, you bring in Ethan Grunkemeyer. What have you seen since we last talked at the end of spring ball, and what are your points of emphasis for his development leading up to VMI in 6 weeks?
Yeah, first of all, he's just wired the right way in terms of the guys in the locker room like and respect him. He also has the ability to make pretty much any throw on the field, but he also has more mobility than I think people give him credit for, right? So he can hurt you with his legs and his arm and his mind. I think when you got a quarterback that can make those type of throws, and the tight ends know they're going to be involved, and the wide receivers know they're going to be involved, but we're also going to have a commitment to the running game, then they get excited about that. And I think we got legitimate competition. I think we got as good of depth at the quarterback position as any school in the country, and I think that's hard to do in today's environment, right? Because everybody just wants to go to be the starter. But we got true competition there, and the depth is good, but the reality is you got to have the guy that's going to separate you and differentiate you. So he's had a great summer. He's had a great spring. I'm really excited about how he's approached everything. But there's other guys in that room like Bryce Baker and Troy and Keldon that also are going to be competing.
Coach, two more questions, guys.
Why did you bring these three players here? Can you say a few words about them?
Yeah, they're great examples of what we're trying to build and culture and how they're wired and their work ethic. And Tyson Flowers is one of these guys. He could be president of the United States one day. He's super polished. He's super sharp. He maximizes everything. He was upset last night because he usually goes to bed at 9:30, and we were out till like 10 o'clock. He's just he gets it, right? Kamari Copeland was one of the most highly recruited guys last year. People trying to get him into the portal. I had a chance to go to the NFL. When I got the job, priority number one was to keep Kamari Copeland, what people thought was our best player, returning player on our roster, and he's really embraced what we're doing and how we're doing it. I think he has a chance to have a big year and just graduated this spring. And then Marcellus Hawkins is a guy I think he's got a very bright future at the running back position, to be built just like you want a running back. He also, I don't think a lot of people are talking about this, but a lot of times guys can only get so much better because they've been playing their positions their whole life, or they've been training at a high level his whole life. This guy played D2 football, was a high school quarterback. So he's got a very, very bright future, and he's always got a smile on his face. And these guys are culture drivers for us in the locker room, but I think they're also going to be guys that you're going to be excited to follow all year long.
Last question.
Kashawn Brown, a big addition from Duke. A guy who's primarily been a slot guy throughout his career, but I know in the spring it looked like we saw him a little more working on the outside at times. Do you anticipate him working more on the outside, and what is that transition like as a receiver going from primarily a slot guy to much more of an outside receiver?
It really just comes down to how do we get our best three guys on the field, right? So if our next best wide receiver is a slot, then we think we can move Q to Z. If our next best receiver is an outside guy, then we can leave Q in the slot. That's going to be a really important battle that we're going to have all camp to figure out who are our top three wide receivers, and then how do we move the puzzle pieces around. Getting Q some work at Z allows us that whoever is the next best wide receiver, we got a chance to get them all on the field at the same time. So that's going to be a big part of it, and obviously being explosive in the passing game is something that's really important to us, and we're committed to. And Ty Howell's done a phenomenal job, and Danny O'Brien, and really all those guys have done a great job. Warren Ruggiero as well. So we got to be able to make them defend 53 and a third, and we got to make them defend 120. Thanks, guys.
Sure.